And we're back. Thanks to those of you that stuck with us through those technical difficulties. We came back in the top of the 9 o'clock hour with a video of President Obama telling everyone in a speech in 2011 that he could not enact immigration reform by executive action. And then we froze up. We also played a little clip of his statement from last night, back to back. So I don't know what caused it, but Obama strikes again. Thanks, Obama. But all kidding aside, the interesting thing, the reason we played those clips, is President Obama knew well ahead of time that this whole idea of executive action to keep dreamers in the country was a stopgap measure. He said it several times. You can Google it. Many times he said that. But when Congress did not act before the 2012 election, he issued DACA as what he called a stopgap measure. Something to give Congress time to act. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling on the Gang of Eight bill that ultimately failed, and ultimately I think led to Republicans taking the Senate in 2014. I don't know if you guys remember, but that was a major issue in those midterms of Obama's second term. But it's really no different than Trump ending it and then turning around and saying to Congress, hey, I've got the ball rolling. Now's your time to act. We got another, Dana Bash of CNN. If you saw that video, she says that President Obama, he acted without Congress, although he said for years that it was not legal. So even CNN folks, she's kind of a straight news reporter anyway. She's not there to provide commentary. She keeps it real. And then I got another quote here if I can find it. Let's see here. Don Lemon said, if you don't want to listen to the words, just listen to the policies that have put into place, mostly by executive action that they've said now was illegal when President Obama did it. But when this president does it in executive action, it's all of a sudden not illegal and should be law. It's hypocritical. That, my friends, is the biggest problem in media today, is we have people on television who are stupid. And I don't mean that in the sense that Don Lemon has made a nice way for himself in life. He's host on prime time. He gets fairly decent ratings, probably more than me. But for him to go and try to be an authority on the law and how things work, he looks at it through such a partisan lens. When he says they've said it was illegal when Obama did it, but now that Trump does it, it's okay. Well, that's because Obama added a policy himself. He created something. Whereas Trump is using an executive order to rescind what was illegal. So it's kind of a hole in that argument. It's a flawed argument, and it really makes zero sense, especially in relation to the context that Don Lemon meant it. He followed it up with, it's just flat out discrimination and only white people are welcome here, which is very, very dangerous territory. And honestly, it speaks to a larger problem, a larger phenomenon we have going on in our country right now. They will have you believe, when I say they, I mean the left, Democrats, the media, academia, Hollywood, they will have you believe not only that Republicans are somehow now the KKK and anyone who supported Donald Trump is a neo-Nazi or a Klan member. Spoiler alert, I voted for Trump and I've never met a KKK person or a neo-Nazi. I did know one guy in high school that went to prison, but I think he had to get the tattoo, but I don't really talk to him. But aside from that, they've they've got these folks thinking that there really is some sort of fascist movement, that Trump really is Hitler. And I often wonder, when you add it all up with Russia and the scandals that are going on, why are they doing this? Why? At first I thought it was because they're out of power. But when you think about how many seats Republicans have taken back and how dangerous the Senate map is in 2018 for Democrats, they're on a wing and a prayer here. They're on their last leg. And it's amazing that the party of Indian removal, Andrew Jackson, father of the party, they're also the party of slavery. They are the party of rebellion and secession, seceded from the country, started a war. We all know about that. They were the party of black codes, poll taxes, Jim Crow. They were the party of segregation. They survived all of that. They were the party of the Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson. They survived every bit of that, but not until now, with President Barack Obama's 8 years, not until now have they been so endangered. And it's fascinating to me. I'm a political junkie. It's very reminiscent of what happened in the 1850s when the Democrats were able to eliminate the Whigs. The Whigs were, it was a two-party system. Without getting too much into the weeds, President Polk, 4-year term, annexed Texas, got the Pacific Northwest, fought the war with Mexico to expand the country, and created so many questions about what the future would be. And the Whigs ran on it, took control. Zach Taylor was elected in 1848, and they were in such a political conundrum, especially as the sectional issues that led to the Civil War started arising, that Democrats were able to just become massive and win all over the country and became too big to fail, essentially. And the Whigs were never heard from again. And the reason I bring that up is that's when the Republicans came along. That's when the industrialists of the North, big cities, Chicago, New York, started running. Abraham Lincoln was elected as a senator and then obviously won in 1860. And they boxed out the Whigs, but the Democrats became so big back then that they split. They were it's like they were too big, kind of like how Republicans are now. And it led to the famous split at the 1860 convention. They had 2 nominating conventions that led to 5 candidates on the ballot in some states for president, and led to Lincoln's victory despite not receiving a single vote in the South. Abraham Lincoln wasn't even on the ballot in the South, which we'll do a history segment some other time. But why that's relevant for today is the Democrats are a lot like the Whigs. Republicans, starting at about 9/11, post 9/11, was when we saw the Republican Party formally take over the South. As far as, they'd been voting off and on for Republican presidential candidates for years, going back, as far as Theodore Roosevelt in some cases, but Harding had some support in the 20s, as did Coolidge, but not really firm support until we get into Eisenhower, and then Nixon blew the door open. But then, Jimmy Carter, the South, he carried the South. Ronald Reagan, then, as a Republican, carried the South. Bill Clinton carried the South as a Democrat. So it was very much back and forth battleground for decades, for an entire generation even. It wasn't until the post-Clinton years and post 9/11 that state houses and governorships constitutional officers in southern states went Republican. And that set off this massive shift where come 2010, for the first time since Reconstruction, but that I don't really count that because Republicans were elected, but that was when most of the southern population wasn't allowed to vote yet because of the war. So for the first time around 2010, you have Republicans controlling state houses, which means they get to gerrymander. They get to draw the lines for Congress, which has led now to these super majorities in state houses, majorities in Congress, and I think this is going to be continued majorities in Congress, quite frankly, that have boxed in Democrats to where they're just a regional urban party. If you watch CNN, and MSNBC does this too, they have abandoned the practice. Whenever they have a Democrat on the air, it used to say, who's an example? John Lewis, for instance. It would say Rep. John Lewis, and then in parentheses, D-GA, Democrat from Georgia. But now 3/4 of the Democrats in Congress are either from California or New England, and the rest are from big city urban areas. Hardly any rural Democrats. I think Sanford Bishop from Southwest Georgia might be one of the only ones. There's folks from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, but only a handful. And the reason that that's relevant is back to CNN, MSNBC. Now they'll just say Rep. John Lewis, Democrat, and then they'll say like his committee or what he's there to talk about. They won't even say the state anymore because they know what's going on. They know that it's a dying party, but they can't admit that because, as we know from just the election, I mean their strategy is to completely double down on everything they said about Trump leading up to the election with the hopes that somehow the people will believe them. But I mean, no one's, number one, no one's really even watching anymore, and number two, people see right through it, and they're just so embarrassingly out of touch. We'll circle back to what we opened the segment before the technical difficulties. In his statement, President Obama said that Trump acted without Congress. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Let me find it. He defended his original executive order, prosecutorial discretion, and wrote a long letter defending the so-called Dreamers, who he said are working jobs, they're 91% employed, they want to start businesses, they're not taking anything away from us. And that was the point that Don Lemon stuck on. And why this is relevant, and how it kind of proves how out of touch the left and the media is with everyday average Americans in flyover states, is that it just seems so arrogant to say, they're all employed, 91% of them. They're all starting small businesses. They're not taking away from any of us. What do you think the mom and dad, near in retirement, they've got 3 kids in their 20s, let's say they live in Ohio or Michigan. Their wages have gone down. Maybe they've even lost their job. Their children went to college. One's unemployed. One works minimum wage in the service industry. And the other one's addicted to heroin. That's real life. That's, especially when you compare it to the opioid problem. And affects me personally because I had a very close friend that I grew up with that died of an overdose last year, and another one that almost did. And it was a miracle that he's still with us. And especially the ones that served in the military and fought war and come back here and can't work, and they're put on drugs by the VA, and they can't see a freaking doctor, and their dependence on opioid pills turns into dependence on heroin. And you look at these kids with student loan debt, and then you have former President Obama say they're not taking anything away from us, which, to be fair, I mean, I don't hold any resentment towards it. But if you're that parent and you see that, okay, 91% of these people are employed, they have small businesses, that's competition. That's 91% of, 8 million people that have jobs that their heroin addicted kid could be working. What's wrong with that picture? A lot of times politics is very, you got to break it down to the lowest common denominator, and you got to break it down to simple logic. And I can see why everyday Americans, the rank and file, flyover states where the life expectancy for white males has gone down steadily in the last 15 years, I could see why they support ending DACA. I can certainly see why they voted for Donald Trump. And for the left-wing media constantly trying to persuade viciously that anyone who voted that way made the wrong decision, it's just constantly out of touch, and they know they're not getting through to people, and that's what scares me. Like what BKP said yesterday about the threat from North Korea, but there's also a very real battle from within. And the more unhinged these people become, these people with the blue check marks on Twitter, like Jennifer Rubin, the ugly, inhumane GOP, Fareed Zakaria, they're playing on people's fear, even though that's exactly what he's doing. Michael Jolette, 91% of dreamers, $400 billion in GDP. If they're deported, it's just racism. Is it though? I don't know. Luckily, we have elections and we get to choose that. And although some people never want to accept that, it's how this country works. And we're going to have another one here in about a year, and we're going to get into that when we come back. Take us to break, Sam.
This summer, nothing says love like a box of truffles, especially if that box of truffles is in a blizzard.
This is all my favorite truffles. Fudge, caramel, and peanut butter. It's like a surprise in every bite. I bet you're full of surprises.
Actually, I'm full of chicken strips. Just had my break.
You're cute.
Still got it.
The new Triple Truffle Blizzard Treat with fudge, peanut butter, and caramel truffles.
Welcome to Dairy Queen.
Enjoy a $1 Misty Slush and more.
Hello, my name is Chad Watkins. I'm the manager at Larry's Body Shop. We are a family-owned and operated business and have been serving the North Georgia area since 1978. We are located at 1216 Progress Road in LOJ, Georgia. Our shop specializes in collision repair, and we work with all major insurance companies. Larry's Body Shop is ICAR Gold, the highest role of training recognized by the collision repair industry. It is estimated that only 10% of collision shops meet these standards. Our shop consists of state-of-the-art equipment such as laser measurement system, down-drive spray booth, spot and MIG welding equipment. All of our paints are mixed on site so that we can guarantee your paint to match every time. I know that having an accident can be a stressful event. We take pride in making sure our customers are satisfied with the repair of their vehicles. Our waiting area is clean and comfortable with free Wi-Fi and refreshing beverages. So if you're in an accident, stop by and see us at Larry's Body Shop.
North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds. Come on in to view the area's largest selection of fine jewelry at North Georgia Diamond. All repairs and designs are done on site by our jewelers. And North Georgia Diamond has the lowest prices on loose diamonds. You can also sell your gold, silver, and coins at North Georgia Diamond between Walmart and Lowe's in East LJ. Locally owned by Bill and Allison Craig, North Georgia Diamond is your source for diamonds in North Georgia.
We are 10 months removed from the election. We are 10 months removed from the election, but that isn't stopping Hillary Clinton from continuing to place blame on others for her loss. Her new target, Bernie Sanders. In excerpts from her book posted online, Hillary said, quote, "His attacks cause lasting damage, making it harder to unify progressives in the general election and paving the way for Trump's crooked Hillary campaign. He didn't get into the race to make sure a Democrat won in the White House. He got to disrupt the Democratic Party. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I wish Bernie were too." A primary.
Well, there you have it there. Welcome back. I'm your guest host today, Richie Stone, in for BKP. It is Wednesday, September 6th, and we are coming at you live from FYNTV World Headquarters. This is Good Morning from the Office, and that clip, thanks to the folks at the Fox News Specialist, Cat Temp, one of my favorites. And this new Hillary Clinton book is out, What Happened. I know we teased it a little bit in the first hour. I mean, it's just comical. I made sure that we played the laughter because we went over the list of all the folks she's blamed, and now she's in the stage of grief where she's going after Bernie and what she calls the Bernie bros, calling them violent, sexist, you name it. Basically everything she calls Trump supporters, which kind of seems like an oxymoron, but you know, ironically enough, she might have a little bit of a point because when we see Antifa, I think that's the Bernie crowd, the communist socialists. But picking up on a point before we left for break about how the Democrats are, to say the least, in trouble. They are looking at a tough map in 2018, states that Donald Trump won, from Ohio to West Virginia to the Dakotas to Montana, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan. The list goes on and on and on. And they're at a point where they got to choose one side or the other. Are they going to keep going to the left like they did during the Obama years, knowing that they lost historically, and keep going left and figure out that they're eating their own, if you will? Or do they try to be moderate, which plays into this whole DACA thing, because there is certainly a part of the party that wants to be moderate. I think guys like Dick Durbin, folks that have been around a while, and especially the senators from the states that Trump won, that will try to maybe rein the party in a little bit. Because, I mean, this whole thing with Hillary Clinton, number one, it's out of control. I mean, she's one of those people, I think, that just can't stand not being part of the mix. You know, they love to say that Donald Trump loves to be in the news cycle. Donald Trump loves all the attention. That's why he pardoned Arpaio on the night a hurricane hit. But let's be honest, Hillary Clinton, and for that matter, Barack Obama, they're the same. They're both the same, but they get a pass from the media. You know, somebody will say, you know, in an argument, somebody will be like, well, Obama did this or Hillary did that, and the media will quick to fire back. Oh, well, he's not the president anymore, or she lost. She's not the president. Why are you bringing her up? Why you bring him up? Well, it's because you do. You meaning the media. They love getting these snippets from everyone. This morning, our buddy Jeff Zeleny, Mr. What Enchanted You the Most, was reading an excerpt from the book, and you would have thought he was reading fairy tales to the royal family. I mean, he had his narrative voice on. He was very careful in how he read it, very descriptive, lots of emphasis on certain words, and it just underscores the point that number one, they're not over the fact that she lost, but number two, they're yearning to have her be relevant, and Hillary Clinton is the same way, and also Bill Clinton. He just released a statement about DACA this morning also, and it's like they're trying to be subtle, subliminal about what they feed in. You know, they've always been this way with the 24-hour news cycle, but now that everyone's hip to it, it's like they're the last to find out that people are onto their tactics. And, you know, this 2018 map is something that, you know, I don't know, it's gonna be fun to watch, because you've got West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and I have a very, very solid source that says he will not be switching parties, even though the governor of West Virginia has. And back to the point in the last segment about the shift that happened in the South and how the South became Republican after years of Democrat rule. We're now seeing that creep into the Rust Belt. You know, that's where Donald Trump won the election. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Non-urban areas in what's known as the Rust Belt are starting to go Republican. And that's the scariest possible scenario if you're the Democratic Party. Because if you lose Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Debbie Stabenow, who's running against Kid Rock, by the way. Can y'all imagine if Kid Rock was a senator? And Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, and like I said, Joe Manchin, and then I can't remember the lady's name in Wisconsin. You never hear from her, which, you know, with the way Republicans have been winning out there, I don't blame her. She was part of the 2012. She piggybacked onto Obama's election that year, the re-election year, and she's in trouble, especially in an off year, midterm year. So that's 6 seats right there. And then when you talk about Heidi Heitkamp, John Tester in Montana, I mean, that's almost guaranteed. Bill Nelson, who's like 75, I don't know, maybe getting close to 80 in Florida. Florida's swinging the other way, especially in an off-year election. Then I know I'm forgetting a big one, but that's 9 seats right there. Mitch McConnell's looking at a scenario where he might have 62 people. Oh, and just today, Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, if the reports are to be believed, is gone, which means Chris Christie, once again, will be back in the news because he'll be able to appoint a replacement. So that's another Democrat gone. So we're looking at possibly at the start of 2019, the second half of Donald Trump's first term, 63, 64, maybe even 65 Republican Senate seats. that folks, that's unheard of. I mean, not unheard of, but that's a lot. That does not happen very often. I don't know what the largest majority's ever been, because the Senate didn't have 100 seats until the 50s anyway, when Alaska and Hawaii were added. But it's just so amazing to me that you have on one end the media and what I call the blue check marks on Twitter, and the left in general. They're always the loudest, they're always the marchers, they're always the ones that are in your face, and the way they tell the story. And then when you compare it, on the other hand, to what's actually happening, how the results in these elections are turning out, it's like we're living in two different worlds, and they're gonna be the last ones to realize it. And I really do feel bad for them, because it's just the day's coming where Eric Erickson, who does afternoons in Atlanta, always used to say, probably still says it, know when your idea or your side of an argument is in the minority. And I couldn't agree with that more. It's something I had to deal with myself in 2012 when I was shocked that Romney lost. That when there's an issue or an election or a bill in Congress, and you support one way or the other, you have to know in your mind whether or not that's the popular opinion, because that completely dictates how you approach it. If I know that I feel one way, but Sam and Rose back there feel another about something, I'm not gonna treat it as if I've got the wind at my back. I know I'm gonna have to compromise, and vice versa. When you have 50 people compared to 5, the chances of you getting your way are much greater. But that's also what makes this country wonderful, and it's what the country was designed to not be mob rule. Which is why, if you are the underdog, if you are outnumbered on an issue, you still have a chance to either compromise or at least have your voice heard, because our process is so difficult. You gotta, to get to the Senate, you gotta have 60 plus votes. It's more than a majority. That's why, to be president, it's not a popular vote. It's 51 separate elections voting for the president, all in one day. But I guess what I'm getting at is, you have to know when your opinion or your ideology, your worldview is in the minority. And for the media, this really goes back to, I think, the Bush years, 2004, when they really did think, they were absolutely certain that John Kerry was going to beat George W. Bush. The war was unpopular by that point. The media made it that way. They had convinced half the country that there were no weapons of mass destruction, which, for all we know, there were, and then they left. Hint, hint, North Korea right now. Where did those come from? And then in that election, Michael Moore comes out with Fahrenheit 9/11. It was massively popular. And they thought the tide was going their way, but it wasn't. It was a very close election. It swung on Ohio, and many people thought, up until late in the evening, that into that next Wednesday, that Kerry still might pull it off. But that was when the left started getting really aggressive, especially when they lost that one. They were livid over what they called swift voting. We all remember that, where despite the fact that George W. Bush was in the National Guard, and despite the fact John Kerry was in combat on a riverboat in Vietnam, they were able to turn the tables on Kerry and make it, question his war record, and, make it seem as if he was fudging on his record. Even, and I think they might have been right. I mean, he wasn't, he went out there trying to make it sound like he was G.I. Joe, when in reality it was more like, I don't know, he was in combat, but he wasn't what he made himself out to be. But what politician doesn't do that? But they were so livid over the way that happened, that they just went all out on him, on Bush. In 2006, for the midterms, Democrats took Congress. And then 2008, that election between McCain and Obama was really Obama versus Bush. Obama ran on Bush's record the entire time, and it worked. Much like what Trump did running against Obama's record. So the wins were at the backs of Democrats, the media, liberals. They made major victories in 2008. And they were the majority. They had the conscience of the people. But as Obama's second term started unwinding, and there was a major shift in media, how we got our news. People kind of, I say the bubble burst. People got out of the bubble. People started looking at alternative news sources, a lot more conversations between folks, like on Facebook, message board style interaction, where, instead of just listening to the guy on CNN, you had 5 people that and respect have a conversation about politics from all different sides, which enabled you to, come up with your own decision. And this crazy thing called Google, where you can take what these people say and say, okay, I don't know if Johnny knows what he's talking about. Oh, Johnny's right, but Peter's always right. Oh no, Peter was wrong. How about that? So the Democrats still relied on their old model, and this goes back to Hillary Clinton's book, where the excerpt that came out today about her matchup with Trump, where she bemoaned the fact that she ran a traditional campaign. She did what you were supposed to do. She did went through the proper channels of how presidents usually run races, whereas Trump broke all the rules. He was calling into shows and on Twitter, and it's almost as if that took the Democrats by complete surprise, and that they kind of got held back and didn't realize that they were no longer in the majority with their opinions, and they still haven't realized it. And that's what I think some are starting to realize, especially the ones in red states, especially the ones in states where Trump won. You look at a guy like Tim Ryan, who challenged Pelosi for the speakership. They're starting to realize it. They realize there's no economic message other than, Bernie Sanders' message of nationalizing everything. And they realize that the platform isn't feasible. So going forward, they're really running the risk of becoming extinct as a party. And that's crazy, considering the fact that they survived Indian removal, slavery, starting the Civil War, Jim Crow, segregation, Vietnam. But it's this mismanagement that might be the death of them. So we'll see. We're going to take one last break, come back for some final thoughts. You are watching Good Morning from the Office here on FYNTV. Stay with us.